In this video, we are going to be talking about what iridologists can and can't say, or maybe I should say can and shouldn't say. You'll also pick up a lot of other little tips about doing an iris analysis. It would mean a lot to me if you would take just a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel.
I'm glad you're with me today. It is so good to have you with me. Today we are going to have a really good chat about what we can and can't say as iridologists. Now, this is really important because there are a lot of people out there who are walking a fine line, treading on thin ice, and they're also making life difficult for the rest of us. And this is a really important thing to be aware of. There are a lot of misconceptions about iridology, and they are being perpetrated by people who are saying things that they ought not to be saying. And again, it just gives us all a bad name. I would love it if you would take just a moment and let me know in the chat box if this is your first time with me. I just like to know who my new people are. I do see quite a few new names. So when we are talking about what we can and can't say, we need to really understand that iridology is not a crystal ball. It does not tell us exactly what is happening in the body. It doesn't tell us if someone's got cancer or if someone has elevated blood sugars or if someone has gallstones. It simply doesn't. The iris can only show us things that are inherent or predisposed or that have been passed down through the generations. Some people would call that genetic. It does not show us things that are situational. So let me give you a little bit of what that means here. Looking at this beautiful lymphatic eye. Now, do all of you know what lymphatic means when we're talking iridology? Lymphatic. So we're not talking about the lymphatic system as circulating lymphatic fluids through the body. We're talking about a lymphatic constitution here. This iris in particular shows a very resilient pattern overall. We've got fairly dense fibers. They're fairly straight. We've got what I would call a high thread count. Now, there are some indications of slight inherent predispositions to a lower resiliency. For example, when we're looking in the nutritive zone, we see things are a little bit darker there. We've got some other special markings in here. This tells us that the nutritive zone or the stomach and intestines might be a little bit less resilient. We see that there's a little reduced resiliency out here in the surface blood and lymph and in the skin zones as well. But overall, we've got a really nice tight fiber structure, good high thread count. Now, when we see an eye like this, looking just at the fiber structure, we see that this person has a strong resiliency. That doesn't necessarily mean this person feels fabulous, right? What it does mean is this person has the potential to feel really great. It means they have the right stuff. They've been put together in the right way that if they nurture their body well, and if they nourish their body well, it will rebound from assaults, from illnesses, from injuries, however you want to term that. It'll rebound quickly. But if this person has been partying hard, they are not going to enjoy good health. You can drive a car into the ground. Here's an antique Rolls Royce. You know, if you know anything about cars, you'll know Rolls Royces are very high end. They are engineered with precision. They are meant to last a very long time. But even with a Rolls Royce, if you forget to do your lube jobs and oil changes, if you don't wax it and polish it once in a while, you know, if you don't change the fan belts and the spark plugs and whatever else is under that hood, it's not going to last as long as it could. So it's really important for us to remember that when we're looking at somebody's eyes, they give us the predispositions. And we need to then have that conversation with the client to understand what the client has done with that predisposition, to understand why they're feeling the way they are. When I was originally taught iridology over 4 decades ago, I was taught that this kind of an eye represented a weak constitution. And we don't use that term anymore. I mean, how would that make your day if someone said, you have a weak constitution, right? We just don't use that term anymore. What this shows us is this person has areas in their body, different organs, different tissues that are less resilient, that need, in order to have them function well, they need to be really well nourished. They need to be well nurtured. This person needs to take really good care of themselves. The first person we looked at can get away with some misdemeanors as far as their health is concerned. They can get away with it for quite a while. The person we're looking at right now doesn't have that leeway. Their body's not as resilient. It needs more nourishing. This eye certainly tells us much about this person and suggests that there are many gifts this person has as well. It's not that this person is a basket case or a train wreck, right? This person has many gifts. Physically, they need to be very self-aware, and they need to be doing things that will support their functioning. When we inherit our potentials, if we're looking at digestive function, for instance, and we look at the range of possibilities, if you've inherited this end, you've inherited like very, very poor functioning. If you inherit this end, you inherit really good functioning. Well, that is the entire spectrum. The fact of the matter is, none of us inherit the whole spectrum. We inherit a piece of the spectrum. And so if we're showing a lot of symptoms, that means that we're not taking good care of our body and we're manifesting the lower end of what we've inherited. If, on the other hand, we are taking really good care of ourselves, we can make our body perform to the best of its ability. It might not be perfect according to the worldwide spectrum, but it's as good as our body can do it. And that will probably feel pretty good. So we need to remember, as we look at an eye, it shows us predispositions. It doesn't give us a guarantee of anything. It does not tell us necessarily what's going on in the body right now. That is out of date and inaccurate. That was how I learned iridology 4 decades ago. As we've moved into constitutional iridology and learning that starting about 30 years ago, we now know that our eyes don't give us that kind of information. I like what my instructor, Bill Cardona, said. He said, the eyes teach us what questions to ask. Now, some of you are going, well, then why bother with this? Well, we're going to get into that in a minute. If you've got a client who comes in to see you and their symptoms don't match their irides, so you're looking at their eyes and you know how to assess markings, you know how to assess resiliency, and this client has symptoms that don't match their irides, then it's either they've earned those symptoms, and it's either because they've done things physically to their body, they have not nourished themselves, they've done things that are destructive, or they've had some significant emotional impacts that are affecting how their body functions. Iridology is a blueprint of the body's inherent patterns, but it does not account for abuse that is dished out to the body. It might even not be something as obvious as this, as obvious as an abuse like that. It may have been something more subtle, like skimping on sleep or having a sedentary lifestyle. There are many things that can begin to weaken a body's resilience. Iridology informs us as to the best ways to care for a body. So food choices, lifestyle, and supplements, when we understand those inherent tendencies and patterns, right? This is why it's so important to have your anatomy and physiology under your belt before you start learning iridology. It's also really helpful to have a modality, so nutrition or herbology, so that when you're looking at the eyes and you're seeing what you're seeing and you're hearing what your client's symptoms are, you can begin to understand they've got these symptoms. I see these things in their eyes. I understand those pathways. Therefore, we want to work in this way with this client. I hope that makes sense, that it's not just look at the eye and tell them what's wrong and tell them how to fix it, because will give a lot of extraneous, irrelevant information. Again, in order to truly help people, iridologists need to have other modalities like herbology or nutrition or aromatherapy or bodywork or spinal alignment techniques. They've got to have another modality. Trying to do iridology without supporting modalities is like taking your car to the garage, to the repair shop, and the technician says, yes, indeed, your car has a problem with the exhaust system, but we only diagnose problems here. We only assess the problems here. We don't fix anything. You're going to have to take your car to Jim down the road. He does the fixing. How reasonable would that be with your car? It's not really reasonable, is it? You want to be able to take your car to the shop, have them assess the problem, have them repair the problem. Your clients want that as well. So you do need a modality. I have had people ask, can I learn iridology and make a living with it? And well, do you have a modality? No. Do you know anatomy and physiology? No. Then my answer to you is no, you can't. You need more than that. All right, so now that we've introduced a little bit about where we're headed, I would like to introduce myself. Now you can see me in two places on your screen, lucky people. This is me, Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a level 3 certified iridology instructor through IPA. Level 3 is the highest level they have. And last time I checked, there are only 8 level 3 instructors in the world. So I was one of the first 3. I got into holistic healing about 45 years ago when I was having health problems. As a young adult, the doctor just couldn't seem to figure out what was going on. But hey, I met this guy and he knew some things about health. And his mother was a lay herbalist and a lay iridologist. And so she helped me out a little bit and I fell in love and married the guy. And here we are 43 years later, we're still happily married, actually probably more happily married now than ever before. And so I got into holistic healing because I had health problems. And I did not like the fact that the doctors couldn't be honest with me to just say, I don't know, or to explain, well, we're doing these tests because we think it might tell us this, this, and this. And that really kind of irritated me. So over the many years that I've been in the industry, I started out as a Jensenian iridologist, did that for the first 10 years. And as I got frustrated with that, because it was the tell your client what's wrong with them style of iridology, I was blessed to be able to study constitutional iridology with Bill Caradonna. I've also designed and taught many courses, and currently my favorite course to teach is the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. And I've written and self-published many books, which are all out of print, except for my iridology textbook, which is available to my students. I am a professional member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and of the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners, and also a professional member of the Alberta Herbalists Association. Again, level 3 certified. IPA is an interesting organization because once you certify, it doesn't mean you're certified for life. You have to be updating your skills, just as you would if you were a nurse or a doctor or a massage therapist. You have to do CEUs. And so when we complete our CEUs, both as an iridologist and as an instructor, we get a new badge. So my badges are now valid till 2024. That's coming up pretty quick here. And then I'm going to have to recert, right? And I love that because it means that I have to stay on my toes. I have to constantly be up on what's happening in the iridology world and in the worlds of herbology and nutrition, since those are my 2 specific modalities. I love teaching health professionals the art and science of iridology. And as importantly, maybe more importantly, I love teaching them how to integrate iridology into their clinical work to help them reduce their consultation time, speed up their program creation, and improve client compliance. So, if you've got anatomy and physiology in your belt and you haven't studied iridology or you want to go deeper with it, I'll give you information at the end of our time together to help you reach out to me so we can talk about you and your goals and where you want to go with iridology and what your challenges are. And we'll discover whether I have the information that will help you or not. All right, so We need to be aware that we can't see from an eye whether a client has diabetes or heart disease or psoriasis. We may see many indicators that suggest an increased inherent risk of disease processes, but we cannot pronounce a diagnosis. What we can do is ask questions. So when we see eyes, we might see certain indicators that suggest an increased risk of blood sugar issues. And we would ask, is there a personal or family history of blood sugar disorders? We might ask, is there a personal or family history of stomach complaints? Is there a personal or family history of intestinal complaints? And of course, I'm always asking those questions as a link between my client's symptoms and what I see in the eyes. So we also cannot say with an eye like this that we're looking at, we cannot say that pigment means toxicity, because pigment does not mean toxicity. Pigment simply means that this person has inherited things from their parents. Now, how many of you have been trained that pigment, any extra color in the eye, means toxicity? If you've been taught that, give me toxic in the chat box. And you'll find the more you play with me in the chat box, the more you'll get from me. Yeah, Vienna's heard that. Thank you, Vienna. I appreciate you kind of being vulnerable and putting that out there. What we know is that pigment is inherited. This has been passed down from this gentleman's parents. Now, I've got photos of his eye from age 42 up to age 65. You look at these pictures, when you see the difference in the eye color, those of you who've got some iridology background where you may have thought this means toxicity, what does this look like to you? What would you say? Why do you think these eyes have changed color? And if you know the right answer, go ahead and put it in there. It is the same person. I want you to look carefully. I use a handheld camera, so things sometimes aren't always totally on the level. This is right here. This is right here. We've got, this is right here. I love this. We've got someone saying, is it sulfur? Is it diet? Could it be different lightings and camera settings? Yeah, okay, so did they change their diet? This is so good, because you will see on so many social media sites, they will show a picture like the one on the left and a picture like the one on the right. And they'll say this person did a lot of cleansing. Look at how they've changed their eye color. I can tell who my students are, because they're the ones who said different lighting, different camera. This is an incandescent flash. This is an LED flash. Incandescent is more yellow, LED is more blue. This light was not quite as bright as this one. So the dimmer light means the pupil will stay larger. The brighter light will contract the pupil. The dimmer light will compress the iris tissue and make it look wavier. The brighter light will stretch the iris tissue and make the fiber structure look straighter. Is this all making sense? Is this all making sense? So what really changed here is the camera. Going from a print film camera to a 24 megapixel camera, right? There's questions about the camera on here. If there's time at the end, I'll give you some information about the camera that I absolutely adore. Now, I want you to look carefully here. Over the years, because we've got brighter light here, smaller pupil, the pigment also gets stretched out a little bit. It makes the pigment look a little less intense just because it's stretched out. If you've ever worn pantyhose, some of you know pantyhose. Am I dating myself? In the package, it looks pretty opaque. But when you put it on and stretch it out, it becomes translucent, right? You can see through it. It's not totally invisible. And that's what we've got here. It's exactly the same concept with the pigment here. Not a fan of pantyhose, got it, Vienna. Neither am I. They're a special occasion thing only. But I want you to see what the big difference is here. Do you see that at the age of 42, this area looks fairly clear? At the age of 65, we have some pigment. What we know about pigment is it accumulates with time, and it accumulates under the direction of genetic cueing. So the genes in this man's body have said, we are going to have challenges in a certain part of your body at a certain time, and this pigment is really the warning bell saying, pay attention to those areas, because as this pigment accumulates, we know something is likely building in him. So as we are doing these, it's really important for us, especially if we can do longitudinal work, that's really good. But even if we can't, it's important for us to never, ever call this toxicity. The color of the pigment tells us which organ wants to be out of balance. The placement of the pigment tells us which other organs will be affected, right? And so when I see this, and even when I see this, I then know what kind of symptoms I need to watch for, and I know what kinds of questions I need to ask. How does the study of epigenetics impact this? As Bruce Lipton indicates, we can impact our epigenetics. Vienna, I agree we can. We can, and I put that in quotes and in italics, because most people are not willing, in my experience, to do enough work to impact their epigenetics. The other side of this is, once the iris has accumulated a pigment, there's no way to bleach it out. We can deposit it in, but we can't draw it out. So this will always be there as a reminder to mind your manners, right? But if we do enough of the right kind of work, we can minimize, reduce, or eliminate the impact this is telling us wants to happen inside the body. Are some of you going, this is weird, this is different? Yes, making sense. Good job. This is so good, so good. All right. Here's a female client, age 44. She's been a client of mine for quite a few years. When we took these pictures about 5 years ago, she was weighed 200 pounds and was gaining weight. Now she's 5 feet 10 inches tall, so she doesn't look overweight, but she had noticed that her joints were aching. She has winter depression. Where we live, our winter days are short and the sun is very low in the sky, so it's not bright. So it's very, very common to have what is called seasonal affective disorder, which is the winter depression. And so she was, in the winter, she's often on Zoloft, which is an antidepressant. She's also having painful periods. Now, her inherent predisposition, what she's inherited from her parents is this. She's inherited a little bit of what we call connective tissue weakness, which means, and not a lot of it, just a little bit, which means that she's likely to have more of a risk of joint issues. She has a central heterochromia. And with this central heterochromia in particular, it tells us her liver wants to be messing with lots of things. Her liver wants to run the show. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we know that the liver is the seat of depression, and it's the organ that ultimately balances our hormones. Also, in this central heterochromia, we have a secondary color, which tells us the kidneys want to run the show. Well, kidneys, of course, regulate acid in the tissues, which will have a huge impact on joint issues. And she also has what we call a shoe lacuna, which is a specific indicator that kidneys want, again, to be in trouble. And so with this, we then need to look at acid creates inflammation. So systemic acid creates inflammation, and weight gain is always inflammation-based. So I asked her about her digestion, and she had no symptoms there, but her eyes suggest an inherent challenge there. So I asked her specifically about her bowel movements, and we need to be very specific when we're working with clients. people have their own interpretations of things. When we talk about digestion, they often think we mean, do you poop? And that's not what we mean at all. We mean, how does your stomach function? Do you burp? Does food sit heavily? We're talking about the first organ the food lands in when you're eating, right? And then we need to talk about intestinal health. And we need to break that down into small and large. We need to be very clear with our clients as to what information we are asking about so we get the information that is going to help us move them forward. So I asked her about her elimination, and she said, well, yeah, I poop. And I said, well, details. I want details. I want to know texture. I want to know color. I want to know frequency. And she laughed because she knows me well. We talk a lot about poop. And she said, well, right now it's all rabbit pellets. Okay, what does that tell us? It tells us constipation. I asked her about her coffee consumption. She was drinking 3 to 4 cups per day. Now, regardless of what anybody says about coffee being a good thing, it is not a good thing. It's hard on the thyroid, the liver, the stomach lining, the bone density, the adrenal glands, and it increases acid in the body, which means it's going to drive inflammation. So with this client, and I believe with this client, I always keep my protocols really succinct. I don't like protocols where I've given them 15 dietary things to do and 12 supplements and, oh, here's a lifestyle thing or two you got to do. I always like to go for the big guns. I like to choose the things that will have the biggest impact the most quickly. And so on her first appointment, I suggested eliminating the coffee, and I explained its impact on her liver and on her acid levels, because those are the two things that are most important to her right now. And it described how it impacts the body. I also suggested using a collagen supplement to help her with keeping her structure strong. I suggested using some digestive enzymes because her nutritive zone inherently does not look robust. And when you've been pouring coffee in on that for a long time, it really degrades the ability to digest well. And I suggested that she needed to consume a good size serving of leafy greens every day, because leafy greens are liver food. Leafy greens are liver food. So if I can choose foods, if I can do diet modifications that will support the body and move the body forward, that's my first choice. My second choice is supplements. And so we got her started on that. Well, about 4 weeks later, we had a follow-up appointment, and she had done all of the things that I had recommended. And that's why I keep my lists really short and very succinct and very measurable, because I want my clients to be able to do what we've talked about. I want them to experience what that success feels like. I want them to feel whatever benefits that's going to give them. And I do not want them to ever feel embarrassed or ashamed if they haven't been able to do everything. Way back when I did the other style of iridology, I used to give long lists of things that needed to happen. And, people wouldn't come back because sometimes they phone and say, yeah, I'm canceling my appointment because I can't do this. Well, I've lost and the client's lost, and that's not good. So I found by keeping my lists short, client can be very successful, and they can come in and I'll say, how'd you do with the coffee? Yeah, I went from 4 cups a day down to I had 2 cups this last month. And it's like, wow, that's fabulous. Keep that up. You think you can get rid of those other 2 if we substituted something else for it? Right? How'd you do with having the leafy greens every day? Yeah, I did run out of them a few times, but I was only out of them for a day or 2 at a time. Well, you weren't eating them before, and now you're telling me you probably had them 5 days a week? That's phenomenal. That's a really good improvement. And so we just kept, and we just built it slowly. So in her second appointment, she'd done all of those recommendations, and just for doing those things, her joints were less achy. The period that she had in that intervening 4 weeks was significantly better. She was feeling the depression lift already. So the next thing I asked her about was, what about water intake? Because we've got some kidney indicators here. She was only drinking 3 glasses of water a day. And I asked her about sleep. And because with TCM, the liver is the root of most sleep disturbances. And she said her sleep was very broken and she never felt rested in the morning. So we suggested getting protein at every meal to help balance out her blood sugars a little bit. And I suggested that maybe half of her protein should be vegetarian based, should be plant based. I suggested she should talk to her doctor about getting an SAD lamp for the depression, because if a doctor prescribes it here in Canada, she can use that as a medical expense on her taxes. I also suggested, now that her joints were feeling a bit better, that a 30-minute walk every day would be really good. And just to be going at a gentle pace. I wasn't looking for a power walk here. I just wanted movement, preferably outside in the sunshine. And, she could dovetail the 30 minutes with getting some sunshine. That would be great. And asked her could she increase her water to 6 glasses a day, and gave her some ideas of, float some cucumber slices in it or some strawberries, give it a little bit of flavor, make it more interesting if you need to. Let's play with this. Have it hot with a wedge of lemon floating in it. Lots of things you can do to make water more appealing. And so again, sent her off for another 4 weeks. So when she came back 4 weeks later, she had made it to her doctor and he had agreed that an SAD lamp was a good idea. So he gave her a prescription. She promptly went out and bought one. Now, if you're not familiar with an SAD lamp, it's a very bright lamp that you sit on your desk or on your table, and you need to sit under it, not staring right at it, but you need to have that light hitting your eyes a little bit for 20 to 30 minutes first thing in the morning, like within the first hour of getting up in the morning. And it's really like plugging yourself into the sun. It is just amazing for what it can do for energy and getting the serotonin and just really getting things moving. She loved the SAD lamp. She said, what I started doing is I have it on and I'm doing 20 minutes of yoga every morning. Are we ever winning or what? She's feeling good enough that she is choosing physical activity, which I love. Her water was up and her protein was doing pretty good. She was getting it 2 meals out of 3, which, from 1 every 3 or 4 meals is really huge. But she was finding she lives alone. She had moved to a new city. We were doing our work over Zoom together. And she was feeling quite isolated. So she was feeling a little bit challenged to get out and go for walks, because going for a walk by herself was making her feel more lonely, more alone. And so we had to work with some mental perspectives and some different thinking patterns there. So did you see how that worked? At no point in time did I give her a diagnosis. I never once said, you have these problems, you have kidney issues, you have liver issues, you have stomach issues, you are depressed, right? I worked with what she brought in, combined it with the eyes, understood what was going on, had lots of wheels turning in my brain, but kept a lot of it to myself, because I don't want to come off as if I'm diagnosing and prescribing. But did you notice then how we broke her program into manageable steps? Things that she could do. Question in the chat box: how do you feel about bulletproof coffee? It's still coffee. There's nothing you can do to it to make it not hard on the stomach, the bones, the liver, the adrenals, the thyroid. There's nothing. You can't take battery acid and make it safe. Right. So all of my clients know I'm going to nag them on their coffee. And 95% of my clients come off the coffee and tell me my energy is better. My brain is clearer. I feel so much better off coffee. If anyone had ever told me that coffee was killing my energy, I would not have believed them if I hadn't done it myself. All right. So Vienna is saying, when I asked, how are you feeling with this? She said, overwhelmed. So Vienna, I'm thinking, from what I'm seeing in your comments, she said, after listening to you several times, I feel my training has been incorrect and now very sad. And so, Vienna, really important for us to acknowledge that whatever your training was, you went into it with pure intentions, right? You wanted to learn something that would help people. And no doubt you have helped some people. There's just a better way. And that's why I'm sharing these little webinars, is to help people see that iridology is beautiful. When you know iridology really well, it simplifies so many things in the work you do with your clients. And that's one of the reasons I absolutely love doing iridology this way. This is a young man. He was 24 years old when we took these pictures. So we want to look at this and focus first on his iris, okay? And as we look at his iris, notice that his eyes are really brown. He's Filipino, so he's got true hematogenic eyes, and they're so brown that the pigment is hiding most of the fiber structure in his eyes, which is very true of most true hematogenic eyes. And so because we're not seeing any significant breaks in the surface of the iris, we are going to assume that he has good structure, so that he actually has good resiliency. However, we're going to tell his story a little bit here. He has a lot of contraction furrows. So these contraction furrows could suggest good drive, that he's go, go, go. He likes to get things done. Then the other side of that is it can suggest a predisposition to anxiety, depression, and stress if he's not well nourished. Now he's only 24 years old. And do you see that right up here, we have a bit of a funny little white, very faint, whitish haze coming over his iris? If you can see that, give me haze in the comments box. If you can see that bit of a whitish haze, where it's just not quite as brown as the rest of the eye, you can see a haze in there, great. This is the beginning of what we call a corneal annulus. This is in the cornea, not the iris, and the cornea can accumulate things like this as well. When we see this, the understanding is liver enzyme imbalance that could be messing with his lipid panel and could mess with his blood sugar balance. So when we look at type 2 diabetes, for instance, and elevated cholesterol, they are the Bobbsey twins. They almost always show up together, right? Now notice that he has very bloodshot eyes, and that suggests a lot of inflammation throughout his body. So I would not tell him he is inflamed. I will not tell him he is prone to stress and anxiety, but I would ask, right? And the reason I ask is because if the client gives me an answer, they own it. So is there a personal or family history of inflammation? Is there a personal or family history of depression or anxiety? Is there a personal or family history of liver issues? Now, most people don't know what their livers do. So sometimes you have to break it down into some of the different functions. Liver does 500 things. You should know at least 5 of those off the top of your head, right? I would ask about diet. What do you normally eat and drink in a day? And I would ask about his circulation, just from various things that I'm seeing in here. So he's 24, overweight by at least 40 pounds. He has a history of depression, anxiety, and gout. And he's suffered with gout since he was a teenager. He comes from a very poor family structure. Growing up, he was badly emotionally abused. And even as an adult, I'm quite close to this young man, and I see the abuse that his family dishes out on a consistent basis. He has many aunts and uncles who passed away in their 60s due to cardiovascular issues. So what we've seen here is when he's good with his food, he's very, very good. He can work out regularly. He can cut out the soda. He drinks a lot of soda, like 2 liters a day. And he'll cut that out. He'll drink water, and he can lose 10 pounds in a month just by cutting out the soda, right? Pretty interesting. When he's really good, when he's cutting out the sugars and eating more vegetables and more proteins, his emotions calm down, the anxiety and depression disappear, and the gout goes away. But when he's upset, he hits the sugars. He medicates with sugars. He stops working out. He sleeps excessively. The gout returns. He becomes very depressed. Now, He's the kind of guy, truthfully, he's my son-in-law. One rule I've learned for those of you who have children-in-law, I don't like the term in-law. I like to call them children from another mother because I love them like that, like I birthed them. They are my kids too. But one thing I've learned when it's a child from another mother is you only offer advice when it's asked for. Ideally, if he was open to it, I would want him to cut the soda out, keep it only for an occasional social setting. He doesn't drink alcohol or coffee, so that's good. I would want him to drink more water. I would want him to eat more leafy greens. I would also want him to be working out 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes each time. So we want him cutting out soda, drinking water, eating more leafy greens, want him working out 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes. Now, I don't care what he does for a workout. I just want him moving his body, right? If he wants to go to the gym, great. If he wants to go for a walk, great. I know he'll never be a runner. That's not his build, but there's a lot of things that he could do, and he could do them very competently. Supplement wise, I would probably want to look at things like ashwagandha, cordyceps. I would absolutely want him to be on a methylated B complex. And I would like him to be on something to support his liver as well. So one of these days, maybe we'll get to where he'll say, Mom, would you help me? And then I will say, I would love to help you step into my office. All right. So from this, I hope what you've seen is we cannot diagnose and we cannot prescribe. Too many people, too many old school iridologists, too many people who are holding on to the way things used to be are doing that. They are diagnosing and prescribing. Now, if you want to get into trouble with the law, go right ahead and diagnose and prescribe, right? Seriously, that's where it's headed. I don't know what the legal climate is like where you are, but where I am, things are getting a little bit interesting as far as supplements go and as far as non-licensed health workers goes. It's getting a little bit scary. And so never ever diagnose, never ever prescribe. It's not good for you. It's not good for your client. And always remember that the eyes teach us what questions to ask. Take your client's symptoms, assess their symptoms in the context of their eyes, and assess their eyes in the context of their symptoms. It goes both ways. And then formulate your very simple programs from there. Right? That is how you build success. So with that, I would love to just introduce you to the dynamic iridology assessment system. It is the only online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, naturopaths. Let's throw in registered nurses, EMTs, physical therapists, dental hygienists, massage therapists who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. So they can stop working unpaid overtime. Now, how many of you see clients and you do an intake and then you go and spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours creating a program for that client to bring back to the next time you meet them or to email out to them? How many of you are doing that? How many of you are creating client programs outside of the time that you are with your client face to face? If you are, just put me in the chat box. Yeah. And with that, are you being paid for those hours that you are spending creating programs? No, you're not. So you're giving your time away for free. Do you know any other profession that does that? My plumber doesn't do it. My heating technician who comes to service my furnace every couple of years doesn't do that. My dentist doesn't. My dental hygienist doesn't. My osteopath doesn't. My massage therapist doesn't. Just saying, why are you? Why are you doing that, right? So when you do iridology the way I teach it, you will learn how to create your protocols in your client sessions so that you will stop overwhelming your clients. You saw how simple my programs are, right? And because the programs are simple, the clients want to come back and tell you that they were successful and they want to know what comes next. How do we take this up one more level? So that increases their compliance and their success and long-term retention, right? So, so important. So in the dynamic iridology assessment system, it's 45 hours plus of live interactive training. We do it in 20 2.25 hour live webinars, interactive, like we're doing now, except that your mics and your cameras will be on so we can actually have conversations while we're looking at the screen. And every class is recorded, so you have access to your recording of your classes. Live group mentoring twice each month via webinar. So in addition to your class time, we have extra mentoring time that does not end when you finish your coursework. It goes on and on and on. We have a live student and alumni. Oh, it's not Facebook anymore. I didn't update this. It's MeWe. We moved to MeWe because Facebook likes to censor us free speakers. We don't like that. You also, as my gift to you, receive a 225-page digital textbook, full color. You can download it if you want to take it to the copy store to print it up. You're welcome to do that. I often have copy stores that are calling me saying, so-and-so has your book and they want to print it. Is that okay? Yep, that's one of my students. She can print one. Right? So really great. 45 pages of digital study notes. We call them the cheat sheets. IPA certification mentoring. So if you want to certify as an IPA iridologist, I include the one-on-one mentoring that IPA requires. That's included in your tuition. It is a time-limited offer, like it's not a forever thing. You have a deadline here. And the case studies that you need to do the first step of your preparation for certification, I supply those for you as well. Basically, the only thing you'll need to buy is a lighted magnifying glass and a pen light. Other than that, everything you need to learn and study and to practice iridology will be provided for you in the course. Here's what some of my students have said. This is Elaine Hedden. She's a master's physical therapist in Alaska. I'm a holistic physical therapist and have wanted to study iridology for years, but just couldn't find the right instructor or school. Judith Cobb's iridology course has been the perfect fit. The caliber and organization of the coursework is professional. Her depth and breadth of knowledge of iridology, herbals, nutrition, and pathology is beyond most instructors and even some university professors. If you are a health professional wanting to expand your scope of practice by learning about the most up-to-date information on iridology, take the 20-week level 1 and 2 class from Judith Cobb, worth every penny and every minute. So my 45-hour course is all of the IPA level 1 and level 2 curriculum. Vienna, I will answer that question in just a moment. Trisha Colstow came to me. She was already certified by another iridology instructor. And this was just a couple of weeks into her studies with me. I just wanted to say that as a new student in the dynamic iridology program, who has worked in iridology previously and was certified by another teacher, I've learned more in the first 2 lessons of dynamic iridology than in all my previous iridology training. I'm so glad I decided to sign up. I know that after taking this course, I will be able to offer my clients the best and most up-to-date knowledge. Thank you. Love that. And one last one. Angela Hodges says, what a fantastic course with a fantastic teacher that actually cares about your success. I'm so happy that I found her. I'm a registered dental hygienist, have been for 20 years, but have been studying naturopathic and homeopathic modalities on the side to help my own family. Now I want to open my own business using iridology to help others be healthier. I've already signed up with Judith for her next class. I do teach other things beyond the iridology, so I can brush up on body systems and learn herbology along with it. Love it. If you're thinking about taking a course, don't hesitate. You will not be disappointed. So, question in the chat box from Vienna. How do you work with remote clients? That can be a little more challenging. The reason I say that is, and this is where the camera work comes in, unless they have a very new smartphone with a really good macro lens, and unless they're willing to be very patient to get the right lighting, getting a little pen light and illuminating the eye from different angles as they take photos with their smartphone, you won't be able to work with them remotely. I recently did a herbal conference here in Alberta and had a table there where I was promoting iridology into my courses. And we were doing many assessments at the table and charging for them. And we were fully booked. And there were people who were very disappointed that they couldn't get in. And I said, well, you can always book an online appointment with me. You're here right now. I can take your photographs right now because I had my camera. I'll take your photographs now and I will send you a link to schedule an appointment. And because I've got your photos, we can work with you remotely, no problem. So remotely, they either have to be able to get really good photos to send to you, or you have to be able to meet with them at least once to get good photos to get you started. Okay, what other things do I teach? For my iridology grads, I teach a body systems herbology or iridology and herbology course where we break the body down into functional systems. We look at what are all the different markings that can have an impact on that system. And then we look at common problems with that system and herbs, vitamins, minerals, nutrition, other supplements that can be beneficial. I also teach a women's holistic health course, which is a 20-hour course, and it's open to anybody. I do strongly recommend that you have an anatomy and physiology course under your belt because we do go into depth on hormones and different conditions that affect women from puberty right through to death. And so that one is actually starting on September, I want to say 19th. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I can send you a link to chat with me about that. Vienna is asking camera recommendations. I really love the illuminator that Matthew Dahmer at Iris Labs has created. And, you know, if you're really interested in that, let me know and I will send you a link to his site that will get you, I'm just going to grab my camera here, that will get you special care. Like he takes really good care of the people I send to him because he knows I'm watching. So this is the part that comes from Matthew Dahmer, this part with this cord on it. 35 millimeter Canon camera, professional grade, and a 60 millimeter autofocus macro lens with extender tubes to get the right focal length here. And then this light. And so the images you saw that had the little round light, that's with this illuminator. Okay, really just a beautiful, beautiful setup. So Vienna, interested in camera or interested in a course? Crystalina, you don't have to have iridology to do the women's holistic health. We actually do not do iridology at all in women's holistic health. Okay, so certainly welcome to, and I'm just making a note here, to join us for women's holistic health. It's good if you've got A and P under your belt. Alrighty, and so Crystalina, I've got that you are interested in women's holistic health, it looks like, and Vienna wants camera and women's holistic health information. Fantastic. Okay, lovely. So with this, for the dynamic iridology, we'll get back on topic here. Dynamic iridology, if you are interested in learning more about the dynamic iridology assessment system course, you have to talk to me. I don't have a link, well, I do have a link, but I don't give it out. You have to talk to me. I have to have a conversation with you. I only accept 10 students per course, and I handpick them. I want students who are going to fit well in our community because our MeWe community, again, graduates hang out there too. We're developing a nice community there. And so if you're interested in this and learning more, then I am going to suggest that you go to tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology, and that will give you the opportunity to book a Zoom meeting with me for us to talk about your goals, talk about your business, talk about what you want to do with iridology, and to make sure this course is a good fit for you. This is not a meeting for me to try to strong arm you into anything, because if you're feeling pressured, it's not going to be a good fit, right? This is really for us to get to know each other, to decide if the course is a good fit, if this is the right time for you, and are we going to do well working together? That is super, super important. I would rather teach fewer people and really love teaching them than have massive classes of people that are not fun to work with, right? We learn better when we're enjoying things. So the site again is, okay, so we're posting that site. Hopefully you can, oh, you know what? Dang. Okay, I posted that and it didn't go to where I wanted it to go. Let me just change this. Thank you for letting me know, Vienna, that you couldn't see that. There's the site pasted into the chat box, tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology. And again, our next course is starting on November 1st. Okay. And so, yeah, if you're interested in iridology or in women's holistic health, those are the two courses that may be open to you depending on whether you've got A and P under your belt and stuff. Jenna is saying, I finished the course in August. The course is amazing. Judith is a great teacher and she makes sure you have a thorough understanding. Thank you for that, Jenna. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love it when my students pop in like this and share their experiences, because that's the goal. The goal is to turn out the best iridologists ever. And I always tell my students, I want you to be a better iridologist than I ever could be, because you're getting a stronger foundation than I got when I started. So you're ahead of the game, right? Because now you can build on that and take it even further than what I've been able to take it. And that would be so exciting. So any other questions here? Just a lovely presentation, Judith. Inspiring, says Cheryl. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. That means a lot to me, coming from a fellow IPA member. Crystalina, good to have you here. All righty, so again, those of you who are interested in more course details and looking at it more close up, then use that link to book a time for us to chat. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a fantastic day. Bye for now.